OU taking a one-time trip to Provo. Then, of course, it's off to the SEC. Welcome into Sooners Live here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate y'all being here. Comments and questions are welcome. Oklahoma going to BYU. We got John Hoover on the line from All Sooners on Fan Nation. Hey, John, what's going on?
Not much, Mark. Getting ready to fly out of here at about 5 in the morning so I can go experience the splendor that is Salt Lake City, Provo, and northern Utah. We're going to go drive through the mountains and see what we can see.
Nice, because I think you did tell me the last time you were on, you've never been to a game at BYU.
Right. Yeah, no, I can't wait. The way the stadium sits and then right above the stadium is the mountains. I'm just like, I can't wait.
Very cool. Have you checked the weather?
Yes, it's going to be awful.
Okay, well, can't have everything, I
right.
guess. And that was one of the thoughts going back to the off season, looking at the OU schedule and thinking, okay, it's pretty favorable, but there is a trip to BYU, and the weather could be a little bit lousy. It could be a night game. Crazy things happen there. It's got that kind of reputation. But this BYU team is not necessarily up to the challenge, it would appear.
Yeah, they're struggling right now. They've been blown out in their last 3 games by teams that Texas, Iowa State, and West Virginia, teams that Oklahoma has either dominated or, obviously, in the case of Texas, has beaten at the end. So it's not a particularly good matchup when your rushing offense, I think, is 124th in the country and your rushing defense is 114th. What do you do?
Yeah, I think old-time football coaches would tell us, if you can't run the ball and you can't stop the run, you have no chance. And as much as it's become a passing game, that still holds true. Yeah, it was a thought in the offseason. Okay, how are these new entries into the Big 12 going to fare? Is there going to be an adjustment? Of course, they've all had their recent or historical success against Power 5 programs. They've held their own. They haven't gotten knocked around, beaten around, embarrassed on a regular basis, all 4 of them. But that adjustment, first of all, I don't know that this is a good BYU team regardless, but also that week-to-week adjustment of playing, quality opponent after quality opponent has obviously taken its toll. And the numbers across the board are pretty dismal when you look at the wins and losses when they don't play each other, of course, against the rest of the existing Big 12.
Yeah, I don't mean to, I'm a small school guy. I come from a small school. My daughter went to the smallest enrollment school in all of FBS. And so I'm not that guy that says these people at Power 5 are important and these people Group of 5 are not important. I'm not that guy. But the simple fact is, when you have to step up in competition and do it every week, you're playing literally with the big boys now. You've gone from the grade school lot or the junior high lot. You're now playing football in the high school lot. And as a kid, as a little kid, we're playing those playground games, and all of a sudden we go up into 7th grade or 9th grade or whatever it was. And it's like, whoa, I am not getting on the field with those dudes. It's literally almost like that, where the Power 5 schools have more big guys. They have more scholarship big guys. I'll give you an example. A Division II kid, Connor Neer, linebacker from Ferris State, 2-time national champ, team MVP and all that stuff. He comes to Oklahoma. He can barely get on the field. What he said, he plays a lot of special teams. What he said was, in the preseason, he said, like, the top 10% of our players on the championship level, 2-time national championship, have about the same size, or the top 10% of our fastest guys are about as fast as anybody at Oklahoma. But it's a very small percentage. And so when you're BYU, when you're Central Florida, when you're Cincinnati, when you're Houston, you're having to live that life every Saturday, man. It is a major adjustment.
Yeah, and Central Florida seems to be the one that's been the best equipped. Yeah. Now, it's not been that successful, but still, they, of course, had the nice effort in Norman and had the game that they should have won against Baylor. But back to this BYU team, yeah, they come in at 5-5. obviously need one more win to get to bowl eligibility and 2-5 overall. Have you done, John, have you stayed up nights working on the permutations and the calculations of this Big 12 race?
Why can't I just cover BYU and I don't have to worry about the Big 12 tiebreakers, right? That's it's pretty easy. Oklahoma needs to win out when they need to beat BYU. And then their last game, Black Friday at home against TCU, another morning game. They need to win both of those games. And then if that happens and Texas loses this week, night game at Iowa State, they're 7.5-point favorite to beat the Cyclones, but they're going to do it without Jonathan Brooks, right? If those two things happen, if Iowa State scores the upset and Oklahoma wins out, Oklahoma goes to the Big 12 championship. There's a couple of other scenarios. Iowa State beating Texas Tech beating Texas next week, and then Iowa State beating Kansas that week as well in the final week of the season. A couple of other scenarios, or Oklahoma State could lose to BYU, Houston this week, or BYU next week, and Oklahoma gets in. So there's some paths there that are fairly clear. If this happens, then Oklahoma needs to win out and qualifies for the Big 12 championship. That's a possibility right now.
Because I would follow up with the comment about, if chalk holds, then who makes the championship game? But I don't know that there is chalk.
Hey, I just saw a tweet from Max Olson from The Athletic. Did you see this? It said if everybody wins at home this week, there could be an 8-way tie for first place in the Big 12. What? That's absurd. There's a lot of parity in this conference, meaning there's a lot of very average teams.
So that's a bunch of 5-3 teams.
Yes.
That's what that's going to be.
Yep.
Okay. Wouldn't that be something else? That would be crazy. Well, it's already crazy.
Yeah, I'd rather not have to deal with that. Figuring out the metrics and the math for that, baby.
I think it would be fun, but yeah, I get your perspective. You're covering Oklahoma. It'd be nice to see them get to a Big 12 championship game and finish this all off. John, when you look at the effort last weekend against West Virginia, again, here comes a West Virginia team that got off to a great start, slumped a little bit, but then was coming off a few strong efforts and was a double-digit underdog, but still the line was 13. We've certainly seen plenty of teams be competitive in that situation, but wow, Oklahoma just put its game together.
Yeah, they did. It was a complete game by the offense and the defense. What Brent Venables said, and he's 100% right, their best 4 quarters of the season. Simple as that. I thought Jeff Lebby had a really good game after 2 very ordinary games as a play caller. Very conservative at Kansas, and then didn't really use Dylan Gabriel in the run game much at Oklahoma State. I think he had 1 carry for -7 yards. Last week, he was 11 for 50 and scored 3 touchdowns. That's how you run your quarterback. So there were some questions to be answered in the post-game press conference about why didn't you use Dylan differently against Oklahoma State? Against Kansas, they ran a lot of jet sweeps and sideline to sideline stuff. Kansas isn't slow. You're not going to run around Kansas. So they ditched all that stuff. They got back to throwing the deep ball. They got back to running behind, pulling offensive linemen, running with power, running power traps and stuff like that. So when you do that, when you establish your identity and say, this is who we want to be, you're going to be a lot more successful if you can do those things. And Oklahoma can do those things. I think Jeff Lebby, just play calling wise, got a little too cute, a little too cutesy is the right word, I guess. And then defensively, you started to see double-digit missed tackles from every position on the field pile up in both those losses. Last week, they cut it down to, I think, six missed tackles for the whole game. And that's what you're after if you're a defense.
We've got John Hoover here from All Sooners on Fan Nation. Catch John's work right there. You see his Twitter handle as well. I will correct myself. X is the platform, of course.
Twitter.
But Twitter, whatever. Everybody knows it as Twitter. So I'll throw this name out at you. You talk about guys getting back to being who we expected them to be. Well, Gavin Sawchuk, is it just a matter of he's finally healthy? Because now he's become the main back and he's produced the last couple games.
Yeah, maybe he's run for his career high in each of the last two games. Drake Stoops, wide receiver, you could say the same thing, career high in the last two games. Maybe the part of it is Oklahoma's um, establishing what I said earlier, establishing their identity 9, 10 games into the season. Kind of a little bit on the slow side, if you ask me. But the fact that they've identified their best receiver, they've identified their best running back, and they're getting those guys the football, that's a huge part of it. But on the Sawchuk side, yes, he's healthy for the first time, really since he's been at Oklahoma. He got got some good action last year in the Cheez-It Bowl against Florida State. Ran for 100 yards. It was his first real game of the season. I think he got like one carry the whole season. He just needs to stay healthy. He's one of those highly tuned athletes. You know, you get a little hamstring or a little hip point or something like that, it just doesn't go right for you. He struggled with a hamstring all preseason, and took him a couple of weeks to get back on the field once the season started, and then took him a couple more weeks to get 100%. Now that he's 100%, he's getting a lot of the carries. You're starting to see the progress.
You know, staying on the Big 12 championship theme, John, how important is it for this team, this program, to reach a Big 12 championship game? Of course, it's going to be historic leaving the conference, but in terms of the program itself, you talk to fans all the time, of course, every day. You're seeing all sorts of posts there. Do they consider this a necessity for a successful season?
Yes, without a doubt. It is right now Big 12 championship or bust. College football playoff is 99.99% out of the realm of possibility with 2 losses. Nobody's ever made the playoff yet, I think, with 2 losses. So they've readjusted their goals. They're readjusted their sights. And right now it's Big 12 championship or bust. Oklahoma, there's been 27 Big 12 champions in football. Oklahoma has won 14 of those, more than half. So what they want to do is finish in that upper by themselves. Nobody else, the whole existence of the Big 12, not Texas, not anybody else, has won more than 3. So OU wants to put its foot down and say, we are the dominant beast in the Big 12 conference, and now we're coming to the SEC.
There it is. John, want to respect your time, so certainly let me know how much time you've got. We also have Nathan Brown jumping on. So Nathan is with Big 12 Mafia, BYU guy. So again, John, want to respect your time. Nathan, we appreciate you being here.
You bet. Thanks for the call, as always, Mark. Love to be here.
So I'm going to get out of the way because I'd like to hear some matchup talk in terms of.
I'm not sure how much I can really go counterpoint.
I thought you were going to make us fight. When you said I'm going to get out of the way, I thought you were going to make us fight. That's not happening.
Not this week.
I would say this. I think at the beginning of the season, in the one game that I looked on Oklahoma's schedule that was the most at risk, it was the BYU game in November. There's a lot of advantages here at home that normally you don't get other places. BYU, traditionally plays better at home. So, we're hoping for good things, but dang, Oklahoma's a great team. I had them picked to win the championship at the beginning of the season. They caught a couple bad breaks with some games. That OSU game was something else. But we're running into the depth problem that all these teams that have been P5 for decades and generations that, we're not a 3 deep. We're a good 2 deep, but you get past that second middle linebacker, and it gets really sketchy. So I think Oklahoma definitely is in the driver's seat. I wish it was a night game. That would have helped as well. So I think Oklahoma's going to do well this weekend.
That's my guess as well. Although I go back to how you started that BYU at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, 260-85. As rough as things have been this year, they're 4-1 at home.
Right.
And it's the second, I guess, after Texas and Oklahoma. I'm trying to think of who's coming in. I don't know if anybody coming in next year has as big a stadium, 63,000, as BYU does. They're going to get loud. They're going to get crazy. The weather's going to be nasty. So, or potentially be nasty, at least maybe during the game it will
It's
be.
supposed
So,
to turn Thursday, so we'll have to see
yeah,
how it goes for a couple days.
I'll be there Thursday when it gets really bad, and then Friday's supposed to be nice, and then Saturday it's going to be possibly bad again. We'll see what the weather does, but I'm thinking Oklahoma's got a lot of advantages, but if they don't exploit those advantages like they chose not to against Kansas and like they chose not to against Oklahoma State, I think BYU could win this football game. That's 24. The line is 24, I think, opened up as. I haven't seen it today, but that's a lot, but I'm not counting out BYU at home.
Keaton Slovis, there's rumors he might be back in the saddle. He's not 100% though. He has some limitations. He's not very mobile. So him getting out of situations is why he's been sacked and had strip sack fumbles. It's kind of what we were expecting for this year. We always have hope, right? When you're 0-0, you look at the schedule and you're like, yeah, there's some games we can get there. We've had a bad, disappointing run of 3 games in a row here that nobody in Provo is happy about. But again, it'll come down to line play. That's been BYU's weakest link is the offensive line. If they can't give whoever the quarterback is a little bit of time to throw the ball, it's going to be extremely tough to score points.
Yeah, and I would say for Oklahoma, it's going to come down to turnovers, giveaways. You saw 3 against Kansas on the road at KU. You saw 3 against Oklahoma State on the road in Stillwater. Just giveaway, just mindless. Here, you take the football giveaways. Not anything that Oklahoma State did to go get it. When you drop a snap or you snap it before the quarterback's ready or anything like that. Or you drop a punt like they did last week against West Virginia. That's a 50-yard turnaround.
Right.
When you drop a punt. So they've got some things. I know Oklahoma's a big favorite, and I know they've got that paperclip on the side of their helmet and all that stuff. But this is a chance for BYU. If Oklahoma doesn't play clean football, BYU can win this football game.
And I will say the 3 games that are really worth noting that they won: Arkansas, Cincinnati, and Texas Tech, who's now all of a sudden playing football again. We won every one of those games because of turnovers, mistakes, mental lapses. And that's something that that BYU will take advantage of those if they get them. So if BYU can stay in it through the middle of the third quarter, I think the game will be close at the end. But if we get to halftime and we're down 17 or 24 like we were last week with Iowa State, I think the game would be over. There's no opportunity for BYU to come back that far. They've come back 14 and 21 down, but Oklahoma isn't some of these other teams that we've been playing.
Am I presumptuous to say that there will be cake and ice cream and all kinds of sweets in the press box?
You bet. Don't be on a diet. Yeah, come ready to have a show. BYU puts on one of the best home shows in the entire country. I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan as well. I've been to NFC Championship games in Seattle, and we all know how loud that gets. In Lavelle Edwards Stadium, it's not far off that. And
wow.
It's only about 64,000. They're trying to get some standing room only tickets for this game this week, but especially in that south end zone, if you go south, if you're heading south and you need a score to win, it'll be extremely tough and difficult to get that. So I'm still hoping to try to get to the game. I don't have season tickets. They sold out in like 30 seconds this year. But regardless, if you get the fans that normally show up for games that are pretty intelligent when to cheer and when not to, I think noise is definitely going to be a challenge. Those illegal procedures, illegal shifts, motion penalties, you don't want them in Provo.
I need an overdose of mountains on Friday and ice cream on Saturday. That's all I need on this trip.
There you go. So you're coming?
Yes.
Here?
Oh yeah, I'll be there. I fly out at 5 in the morning. So
are you guys planning on getting together for like a lunch or a dinner on Thursday or Friday?
I'm not sure what the plans are yet. We'll have to get to there's about 15 or 20 reporters from Oklahoma that are coming.
Okay.
It's a pretty big contingent, so we'll have to see what the plans are. But yeah, if something pops up, I'll let you know.
Please do. That would be really fun. I think. And look, BYU is they're the only advanced school coming in this year that got both Oklahoma and Texas. And not what other people might think. BYU was very grateful for that, and I think it showed a lot of respect that they were the one school that got both those teams. And I tip of the cap definitely to them leaving. It sucks. You're going to the SEC. Obviously, timing's not great for these new teams, but I'm always going to be a fan of Oklahoma.
I was telling Mark earlier, same thing for me. Grew up in Alaska watching BYU games, so.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm something of a BYU honk, and I was the one back in 2014 who said, "Hey, Bob Bowlesby, you need to if you're going to expand." And I got on the OU president David Boren as well. If you're going to expand, start with BYU. Consider Boise State, but start with BYU. Houston, UCF is really good, and Cincinnati plays a great brand of football. And I got 4 of the 5. So pretty happy about that.
Well, that's pretty good considering that, I think everybody here obviously wanted that 2015, 2016 window to come across so BYU could join. To answer a question for me, I was told that Bourne was one of the reasons they didn't join. Was it Oklahoma and Texas, or just Texas that didn't want BYU in?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I think there's always some hesitation when you bring in a religious school, whether it's the Pac-12
Right.
saying no to Baylor.
Right.
We don't need religious fanatics in the Pac-12. There was that narrative out there. I think that goes the other direction as well when it comes to BYU joining the Big 12. There were people who were saying, "Wait a minute, that's the more." I was like, you know what? They've got a massive global audience and their own TV network. They're perfect for the Big 12.
Right. And if the Big 12 is successful in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be largely built upon the presence that BYU has not only nationally but internationally to build brands. The Texas Tech logo I really like, for instance. I can see people buying that in Germany. I can see people buying that in Japan. Where obviously BYU reaches to. So the reach, and then you have Mexico with basketball and the stuff that Brett Yormark's doing. That's all in BYU's wheelhouse.
Yep, I couldn't agree more.
John, let me ask you this: with all this mishmash of they beat them, but they beat them business because of the logjam at the top, who are actually the 2 best teams?
I think it's Texas and Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought Kansas and Kansas State would be up there. Kansas State obviously finished really well last year, but whether it's injuries or just not finishing games, they're all about in the middle. To be honest, this year the Big 12 is probably for certain it is the most balanced conference in the country, which isn't necessarily the greatest thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's good football and people have enjoyed the games. They've been very popular. And then you look to next year, the 4 schools we're picking up. They're not going to replace Oklahoma and Texas, but it's certainly especially Utah is going to bring in a good brand that put with BYU, and the rivalry will definitely buoy the conference. I think I'm bullish on the conference. I'm not sure that these other conferences are going to go past 20 teams anytime soon, because the money that was there 3 years ago simply doesn't exist anymore.
I like the new conference as well. It's very exciting. I was thinking of being in Tucson and Salt Lake again, and it's very appealing. There's some great cities, some great schools that are in this conference now.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yes. Nothing speaks Big 12 more than Arizona State at West Virginia.
And that's the game we wanted, isn't it? It's too bad that's not going to happen with Anderson gone. And that guy's a clown anyway. He wasn't helping the school. He didn't help him in the Pac-12. Certainly wasn't going to help him in the Big 12.
He stuck his foot in his mouth and then he walked out.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's the reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
He should have been fired after the fiasco with the realignment contracts and negotiations. A lot of that disquiet came out of Arizona State. It's because they kept feeding the chum in the water with bloody rumors that the conference was stronger than it actually was. And now the whole world gets to see what BYU fans have been saying for a decade. that the Pac-12 was poisonous. They said they were solidarity, and yet Utah was of all schools was carrying the banner to keep them together, even after USC and UCLA left. I mean, it just, yeah, they're eating their own children. And now you see with Washington State and Oregon State. Did you guys watch that last night, by the way?
Missed it.
I did not. No.
It was, if you can find it, I'm not sure where the replay may be stored, but it was a 2-hour session where they're negotiating and trying to determine who gets those assets. It was fascinating to hear the Pac-12, who's in the middle, really backing up the leaving 10 schools instead of wanting to fight to stay the Pac-12 and staying with the schools that are staying. It was absolutely remarkable.
We said on my podcast today that the Pac-12 is there's a hand reaching out of the grave, right? It's all
right,
gnarly and disgusting, and it's trying to come back to life. They're suing themselves. The Pac-12 is supporting the team. The conference is supporting the teams that are leaving, and yet they still didn't have as bad a week as the Big 12 did with its tiebreaker rules and changing the rules 10 weeks into the season. What the heck?
I think that was the stupidest. That's the dumbest decision Yormark has done, or at least whether he picked it or not, to not take it away once it was announced, realizing what a fiasco it was going to turn out to be. I think that's the biggest mistake Yormark's made.
So you guys clarify this for me, because that was a headline I saw, but I didn't dig into it. So what was the decision made by Yormark in regards to changing the tiebreaker system? What were they trying to avoid or clarify?
The language in the tiebreaker was written very murky, very unclear, unable to decipher. I mean, we're in Oklahoma, we're very vested in what this all means. And we read it and broke it down and talked about it and discussed it. And we came up and said, I still don't know what this means.
Right.
But it looks like, because this three-way tiebreaker, you've got Oklahoma State, you've got Kansas State, and you've got Oklahoma for the potential of a three-way tie for second place. It looks like, according to the language that was written in August, that Oklahoma State beat Oklahoma State beat Kansas State, but they throw that out because Oklahoma and Kansas State in a 14-team conference didn't play each other. So they actually expressly said, if the teams don't play each other, you throw out the head-to-head. But then they're coming back today and saying, and the Big 12 ADs voted, and they're saying, well, we're not going to throw out the head-to-head if they're all together, and now the head-to-head counts. They just changed the rules, and they called it a clarification, right? It's not a clarification. You actually changed the rules, and what they did was they changed it to the right. They made the right ruling. Oklahoma State beat Kansas State. Oklahoma State beat Oklahoma. If they finish tied, Oklahoma State should be in the Big 12 championship ahead of those two teams. But still, changing it in week 11 like this, silly. Absolutely silly.
It's a bad look. It comes across as if they don't want to have Texas and Oklahoma in the championship game. You know, the two teams leaving the conference, they don't want that to be a banner headline. And it's completely stupid. And all it does is make the Big 12 look incompetent. Yep. They couldn't figure it out. I mean, if you do a win over win over win, you know, Oklahoma State by beating Oklahoma should have that advantage, right? But then they go back to these other tie breaking, and if you don't play in that year, that gets the deferential for the matchup. It's ridiculous.
Sounds to me like they didn't learn their lesson from 2014, that they need to do a better job of figuring out who their champion is.
Right. Yes, correct. 100%.
And it should be written in blood. Don't be changing it in week 11.
Not pencil. This was written in pencil, and it's been erased and replaced.
I think one thing we learned from the Washington State, Oregon State thing, and I really recommend you guys watch it because it tells you a lot how these conferences operate. And one of the areas that they argued about was this gray area between whether the schools that are still there actually have the vested interest of the entire conference, or if they're just going to rape and pillage and take what they want and leave the leaving 10 schools with no money, versus the leaving 10 schools saying, well, the conference told us we could stick around and still get our money. knowing the conference is in the middle, but is tilted towards those teams. It's remarkable. And it really just, when you're in the shower or in the car next, try to find that download. And it was fascinating.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, it's it's quite fascinating to see where those two are going to land and what they're going to take with them,
Right.
and what kind of rights.
Yep.
Absolutely. John, we appreciate you being here. I got one other question for Nathan,
Okay.
but you can either stick around or not.
I'll stick around for one question. Sure.
But I also wanted to hit you up on Drake Stoops. So Drake Stoops, to me,
Yep.
seems to be a guy that you're always looking for a bigger, taller, faster wide receiver to take his place. And that's not the guy that you want to be throwing all these passes to. But, there's a Hunter Renfrow in the NFL that seems to be doing rather well, catching 90 or 100 balls a year. So there is a place for those kind of guys. And he seems to be just one of those guys that knows where to be, and the ball sticks to his hands, and he can read the coverage and find the right spot, and just is just a baller.
I'm going to have to look it up, but I think his dad was a coach, I'm told. Bob Stoops.
Yeah, the name
you might have heard the name.
familiar.
I think so,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
I'll look that up. He's got a twin brother who he played with in high school, and they both walked on in 2018, both walked on to the OU football team. One brother went academic side and the other brother went football side. I think Drake's going to be a coach. Imagine that. He's going to be a coach like his dad, like his uncles, like his grandfather. He's just got that center about him. Whenever you ask him about football, whenever you talk about the sport or the game that he loves, man, he's like, I'm up here 10 hours a day. I don't care if we're 0-8. This is the game that I love. I can't wait to get to the next game and help this team win. He is the ultimate team player, and his dad is just like, couldn't be prouder.
Very cool. Nathan, this is the one I've got for you. Because we can't run parallel universes to know the true answer to these questions, but these four have struggled joining the Big 12, and we already went through that for BYU in particular. But of course, Cincinnati lost a really good head coach, so they were going to be on the downslide anyway. They've lost a lot of NFL players in the last year or two. UCF in a similar situation, although they've probably played the best. With BYU, this has generally been a 7-5, more or less 8-4 kind of program most years in the last 20 or 25. Okay. If they were that and would continue to be that, is this the conversion rate to the Big 12, or was this going to be a down year for BYU anyway?
It was going to be a tough year anyway. The biggest problem is that they lost their quarterback, Jaron Hall, and they didn't have somebody in the system to replace him. So you had to go to the auction block to pick up a QB, and that happened to be Keaton Slovis. The idea was he comes in and plays adequate, and the team around him will be good enough that they can win, 7 or 8 games. The biggest challenge is that they didn't have continuity at the quarterback. One of the guys that was the backup transferred to ASU. Another couple ended up dropping out of the program. I don't even know where they went. And the problem with that, we all know, if you don't have a quarterback, especially a mobile quarterback nowadays that's been in your system for a little bit, it's very difficult to win games. Look at if Utah had Cam Rising, what alternate universe would we be in for how well they would have played if he had stayed healthy? And you could put that example to any school that's playing big time football. So I think most BYU fans were just hoping to be 6-6, knowing that it's very difficult to make the transition to these P5 conferences, and then build on that. And I don't think anybody would be hanging their head about that. 5-5 at this point of the season. Yeah, you probably would take that, knowing that maybe you could steal one on the road or get one from a big team. So I don't think, while everybody wants to do well and win a ton of games, I think what you'd find from most BYU fans is they're happy with the record that they've got right now. They're very happy with the way the whole school and fans have been received nationwide. Everywhere BYU goes, it's been everybody tipping their hat to how good of fans they are and how loyal and how they're not disrespectful. And those are all things that BYU really values. So, and of course, the everybody should know, if they don't already, the purpose of the school and the football and basketball program specifically is outreach. It's to show other people what the LDS church is and those values. So it's an extension of that, but they don't get any money from the church. So they have had to deal with much reduced income to be able to survive, and especially through the dark times of independence, this needed to change. So I think everybody was pretty much saying it's going to be a 3 or 4 year turn. The third year, you should really start seeing a ton of response, and we'll just go from there. But anybody who's hypercritical that's a BYU fan right now, I think they've had unreasonable expectations. There were some people that picked them to win 3 or 4 games. So, that's ridiculous. And beating Texas Tech at home, that was a big win. That was, I would say, the signature win of the year.
Okay. And it sounds like about a +5 turnover margin is the formula. That's that's what's needed
Yeah,
maybe this
something like
weekend.
that. Yeah,
All
it's
right.
going to have to be at least 3 or 4.
I'm with you. Nathan, Big 12 Mafia, appreciate you being here. Anything anyone needs to know out there in regards to what you've got going?
Yeah, tonight at 8 Eastern on Big 12 Mafia Show on YouTube, we've got Bob Thompson is going to join us, and we're going to talk about the Washington State, Oregon State stuff. We're going to talk about the University of Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, and see where that goes. But
Very
I
good.
invite everybody to join me. It'll be a good time. And like I said, if you want to come, if you have time to meet, I would love to meet up with you tomorrow or Friday. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the guys are all doing.
Okay, great.
I'll get my staff together. Nathan and Mark, I just want to say real quick, pitch a story if I can on allsooners.com. I interviewed Colby Clausen today. Colby Clausen, the famous linebacker for BYU who took down Sam Bradford and wrecked the Sooners season back in 2009.
Broke his shoulder. Yep.
Yeah, separated the AC joint. I learned all about what AC joints that were that season. So, yeah, I just wanted to pitch that tomorrow morning at allsooners.com. We're going to have a really cool story on that game and that play.
Interesting. I will check that out myself.
He was very, very gracious with his time. Big time, Colby Clausen.
He was a big time player at BYU.
Yep.
Very much so.
John, well, you'll have to get some sleep tonight because you get out there bright and early. So, John, thanks so much for joining us. All Sooners on Fan Nation. You can catch John right there. You see the Twitter handle as well. Nathan as well. Appreciate you guys making this work.
You bet. Thanks, Mark.
Enjoy the game.
See you, Nathan.
No problem,
Take care.
Mark. You bet. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.